We've reached an agreement. Emma keeps the memories. I keep the lake house worth 1.9 million. The words hit the air like a pebble, dropping into a still lake. Nobody objected. Nobody turned to look at me. They just raised their glasses. My mother clapped her hands, her smile as soft as if she'd just heard a heartwarming story. My father nodded, his eyes glistening behind his reading glasses. And me, I smiled. Not the kind of smile that comes from joy, but the kind of smile that feels like the final latch on a pressure cooker that hasn't been opened in years. I lifted my wine glass, careful not to spill a single drop on the expensive satin dress I'd spent 3 weeks agonizing over before buying. My voice was light, but ice cold. Congratulations. I'll take back what's mine. And then I sat down. The party continued as if nothing had happened. That's the thing about my family. Silence is never peaceful. It's a smoothly running system fueled by the habit of avoiding emotions. I'm Emma Walker, 38 years old, the youngest daughter in a family where gratitude has dissolved into routine. I'm unmarried, childless, and 10 years ago, a car accident left my left hand with 70% loss of function. But that was never why I was forgotten. I wasn't overlooked because of my disability. I was overlooked because I kept getting back up and kept giving. I arrived at Lake Tahoe 3 days ago, arranging every detail of my parents' 60th wedding anniversary celebration. The venue, the menu, the live band, the gold-etched wedding cake, all of it was my doing. I wasn't asked to do it, but when my father called me in March, he said, "This year's finances are tight. Could you help us put together something simple, cozy?" Simple turned into an 80-person party in a lakefront villa decorated like a vow renewal ceremony. No one asked how much I spent. No one mentioned me in the speeches. When my mother stood at the microphone and thanked our children for always supporting us, her eyes only lingered on Michael, my brother, who's never even organized a family picnic. And then my brother stepped onto the small stage amid applause, his voice ringing out like the closing scene of a touching American movie. We've reached an agreement. Emma keeps the memories. I keep the lake house worth 1.9 million. The guests burst into laughter, thinking it was a joke, but no one corrected him. My mother smiled for real. My father patted Michael's shoulder, full of pride. Michael, unmarried, childless, had never shown any interest in that house. I was the one who paid for the boat dock repairs, installed the new water filtration system, and redecorated the guest cabin. And yet, I keep the memories. In that moment, I didn't get angry. I didn't stand up to argue. I just smiled as if I'd spent my whole life preparing for this moment. I clinked my glass, congratulated them, and sat down, as if it had nothing to do with me. And that's the scariest truth in their eyes, it really didn't. I left the party before 9 p.m. No one noticed. I still haven't heard my mother call. Haven't seen a text asking, "Did you make it back to the hotel safely?" The small things people associate with the concept of family. I walked through the parking lot unhurried. The lake breeze carried the scent of water and rotting pine. The villa's lights cast a glow as if the place had never held the years I spent quietly nurturing it. Back at the hotel, I changed, took off my jewelry, washed my face. Looking at myself in the mirror, I saw no tears, no anger, just a quiet, almost terrifyingly calm gaze. I opened my laptop, clicked on email, typed the subject, "Request for Family Asset Contribution Report, 2013 to 2023. In the body of the email, I wrote one sentence. Please provide a detailed list of all expenses, items, assets, technical systems, and financial support I've provided for the Lake Tahoe house, my parents' business and family members over the past 10 years, including invoices, payment dates, and proof of transfers." My fingers paused for a moment. Then I hit send. For 10 years, I thought giving was how I'd be seen. I believed that if I organized enough parties, paid for enough medical bills, bought enough birthday gifts, they'd see me not as a walking wallet, but as the daughter who survived an accident and remained quietly kind. I remember my mother's birthday when I gifted her an Italian coffee maker imported from Milan. She'd said at a party that drinking that kind makes you feel worthy. Her only thank you text, "The machine's fine." Why spend so much? I remember spending $400 to replant the backyard of the lake house, only to hear my father say at a family meeting, "Good thing Michael advised us, so the garden's feng shui is perfect." I remember giving up my seat at Christmas dinner because the neighbors are grieving, and my mother told me, "You can stay in the kitchen, Emma. You said it's the warmest place." As if my kindness was a free pass to be pushed out of every relationship. But tonight, after my brother's declaration, and the silent agreement of an entire party, I realized what I should have known long ago. I'm not seen as family. I'm infrastructure. A pillar. A foundation. And when infrastructure speaks up, they call it overreacting. I closed my laptop, stood up, poured a glass of water. I drank slowly, sip by sip. Each swallow felt like erasing a piece of my worn-out past. I don't know exactly what will come next. But I know one thing: I won't keep participating in a system where I'm not seen as human. I'm not demanding love. I'm demanding boundaries. The faint yellow light in the hotel room illuminated the only photo I brought a family picture from when I was 12. I'm in the middle, my left arm wrapped tightly around my dog, my mother looking elsewhere, Michael laughing, and my father, as always, quiet. The photo has faded over time, but tonight I saw it clearer than ever. They haven't changed. I'm the one who's different. And tomorrow I'll start dismantling the first bricks of the house I quietly built with my heart. I returned to the lake house 3 days later, unannounced. The sky wasn't sunny or rainy, just a misty morning. The pale silver light spreading across Lake Tahoe's water, making everything feel eerily cold. I parked by the roadside, as always, opened the trunk and pulled out a transparent plastic bin filled with tools, an electric screwdriver, pliers, cables, a laptop, and a printed list of over 30 items. I looked like a maintenance technician. But this time I wasn't here to maintain. I was here to dismantle, and I'd do it as precisely as they'd always expected, neatly, quietly, without disturbing anyone. The house was so silent it felt almost suspicious. Michael wasn't there, probably at the gym or walking the dog. I didn't care. The door wasn't locked. No surprise, since I was the one who installed the smart lock and granted access. Now I disabled the app, removed the configuration, and took off the lock face. It took less than 5 minutes. Next was the surround sound system I'd bought for the living room, mounted on the wall 2 years ago, when my father complained he couldn't feel action movies on TV anymore. I knelt down, gently unplugged each cable, unscrewed each bolt. Everything was carefully wrapped in an old wool blanket, the only thing my mother ever knitted for me when I was 15, and the last thing she made for me with her bare hands. The 65-inch TV on the wall was my Christmas gift from 2 years ago. I was the one who hired technicians to mount it, calibrate the sound, update the firmware. That day, my mother had said, "Such a big TV, what a waste. No one watches it." But they've used it every night since. I disconnected the Wi-Fi controller, the mesh system I upgraded last year, so my mother could Zoom with her yoga group without dropping the connection. I disabled the main network, removed the passwords, logged out of remote access. I left only the guest network slow and unstable. In less than 2 hours, everything was sorted. Physical items packed, digital systems revoked, data re-encrypted. I didn't destroy anything. I just took back what I'd given. In the kitchen, the smell of fresh-baked bread lingered, meaning my mother had been there recently. Probably stopped by to leave food for Michael, the kind of quiet care I never received. On the counter was the Italian coffee maker, my gift from Milan for her birthday. She'd told friends Emma's weird, but she picks good stuff. I picked it up, wiped it clean with a cloth, and placed it in a padded carrying case. Careful, as if it were a keepsake. Maybe because it was one of the few things I gave, hoping it'd be cherished. I moved through the house following my list. The water purifier, the smart irrigation system, the security cameras, the window sensors, all installed, maintained, updated, and paid for by me. I removed each one like unraveling the ties I'd bound myself to this family with. Around 10:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Don't be so extreme. You're ruining this family." I stared at the message like it was an outdated ad. The familiar tone, quick to blame, no hint of accountability. She didn't ask why. Didn't ask how I felt. She just concluded, "I'm the destructive daughter." I didn't reply. I turned off the screen and knelt to finish removing the automatic irrigation system, the one I installed, so my mother wouldn't have to water the garden in winter. As I worked on the controller, I remembered a call from 3 years ago. My mother said, "You put in all these things, I don't know how to use them." But my friends were impressed. I'd felt happy then, now I laugh at how I thought that was a compliment. Before leaving, I went to the small office behind the house where my father handled the family business. The desk was tidy walls, lined with certificates, bookshelves full of documents. I sat in the chair, opened my laptop, and logged into the digital systems I'd maintained for his company for over a decade. Mail server, cloud storage, firewall, security, accounting, software, licensing platform. I opened the admin panel and typed a message. Maintenance notice systems have been maintained free of charge by Emma Walker since 2012. As of 08/01/2023, access and technical support will cease per personal policy. I hit send. Then I clicked disconnect technical support and cancel license renewal. It all happened quietly. No dramatic music, no bright lights or tearful scenes. Just the click of a mouse and the lightness of unmooring an anchor that had sunk deep into my heart. As I stepped out, the small rental truck I'd hired was loaded with 3 bins, one for electronics, one for furniture, one for documents. I paused at the doorstep, looking up at the house. Nothing was damaged. The walls were still white, the windows still gleaming, the lake still calm. But something had changed. The house no longer functioned as it had, just like my family couldn't function without me. And that made the space silent. Not the comforting kind, but the silence of a house that had lost the one keeping it alive. No soft music, no doorbell chime, no automated voice saying, "Welcome home, Carol," when my mother walked in. Just emptiness, the same emptiness I'd felt for years, present but unseen. I got in the truck, started the engine, and drove slowly away. The rearview mirror showed the house shrinking, becoming a still shape among the pines and the silver lake. A beautiful house, yes. But no longer home, at least not mine. On the drive back, my phone buzzed a few times. Michael called. I didn't answer. Then a text, "What the hell is going on?" I smiled. Not sarcastically. Just a quiet relief, realizing they were starting to feel the inconvenience of a world without me. That night, back at the hotel, I opened my email. A response from the financial agency. Confirmation of request to remove name from co-guarantee of loan. Figure 874-221. Next step, credit reevaluation. I exhaled. A long, light breath full of certainty. Not a sigh of relief from finishing a task, but the first breath in years not choked by obligation. The lake house was no longer a place where I was confined by duty. It was a project I'd completed. And I'd just pulled the plug. I knew I'd touched a taboo the moment I removed the smart lock from the door, not because of its material value, but because I did what no one in my family dared. I refused to keep playing the sacrificial pawn without conditions. I dismantled the system. They didn't miss the conveniences. They missed control. 3 days later, the first message arrived. Not from my mother, father, or brother, but from Becky, an old family friend once close to my mother. "Are you okay? They're working on rebuilding the old narrative. They're saying you've had mental issues for a long time, that you're acting erratically, cutting ties, isolating yourself." I read the message repeatedly, not out of shock, but familiarity. So familiar I could predict who'd play what role. My mother would cry at the right moment. My father would stay wearily silent. And Michael, he'd say the least, just enough to sow doubt. I didn't reply to Becky right away. I just saved the message. That afternoon, my company inbox received an anonymous email. Subject: employee mental health evaluation needed. Urgent content. We are relatives of Emma Walker. Recently, she's shown signs of emotional instability and erratic behavior. Please consider intervention support. No signature, no phone number, no evidence. But the IP address was logged in our internal IT system. I had tech check it. One came from a public library in Lake Tahoe. Another from a residential IP in my parents' neighborhood. I didn't get angry. I saved screenshots. I created a new folder on my computer, reactions, and started organizing. That's when I realized my silence over the past 20 years wasn't seen as patience. They saw it as latent instability. And now when I stopped being silent, they saw it as proof of that instability. I spent the evening reviewing old emails, bank statements, transfer histories, credit card payments for urgent family needs, unexpected expenses, extra for Michael's car repairs. Each line was proof I'd lived for them, not out of duty, but because I thought it was right. I dug up a 2019 text from my mother when I paid college tuition for a cousin. She wrote, "They're family. If you don't help, who will?" But at that year's family meeting, she told everyone, good thing Michael covered most of the tuition. I didn't correct her. Back then, I thought it didn't matter. But now I see clearly everything I let slide became material for them to rewrite a story where I didn't exist. 4 days later, a cousin texted me I got kicked out of the family group chat for asking your mom if it's true you're sick. I don't believe them. They're handling this so weirdly. My heart sank, not from sadness, but from the chilling realization that they didn't need the truth. They just needed to control the narrative. And then I knew I had to do what I'd delayed too long. I opened my laptop, logged into social media where I'd existed as a shadow. Few photos, few posts. No one knew me beyond a few colleagues and old college friends. I drafted a post. Short. Emotionless. No plea for sympathy. For those wondering why I've been silent all these years, this is what I've been hiding. I attached 3 files. 1. A video from the house's front camera, my mother standing in the yard, yelling, banging on my car window. My father behind her shouting, "We gave you everything." Clear audio, good lighting, unedited. 2. A detailed 10-year financial contribution report. 3. Screenshots of a chat between my mother and her friend. I didn't add commentary, no explanations, no anger. I hit post. Then I stepped away from the computer, made a cup of tea, and sat in silence. For the first time, silence wasn't forced. It was chosen. I didn't need anyone to speak for me. I didn't need a crowd to believe me. I just needed space for the truth to speak. When I returned to the screen, the post had over 200 shares. Messages flooded in from people whose names I'd forgotten. A high school friend wrote, "I had no idea you went through all that. Thank you for being brave." A former colleague from Boston wrote, "The quietest person took the deepest wounds." But the message that stopped me cold was from a distant cousin, Amy. "I always thought you were weird. Living alone, quiet, unattached. Now I get it. You were the backbone of this family. You held it up and they treated you like air. Sorry for misjudging you." I read her message 3 times. No tears, no pang. Just a calm realization at least one person saw I wasn't crazy, just done enduring. That night, my mother called 3 times. I didn't answer. Michael texted, "Why are you doing this? Want to shame us all?" Shame. That word was a mirror. They feared losing face, but never cared how much of myself I lost, keeping theirs intact. I sat in the dark phone in hand messages piling up like they were trying to douse a fire with a torn blanket. But I didn't respond, because I knew nothing is scarier than someone who was once silent choosing not to speak anymore. Tomorrow I'd have to prepare more. I heard they're meeting to handle the family PR crisis. They'll try to frame it as Emma's unstable, we just want to help her. They might call lawyer friends. They might cite my accident, my physical therapy, as evidence of long-term damage. I'm not afraid. I'm just tired. Because I don't want to fight. I just want out. And if needed, I still have what they don't, the truth. And hundreds of living proofs. I know they'll come. They have no choice. The post spread like a smoldering fire finally ignited after years. My silence was replaced by evidence, and nothing terrifies a family built on appearances more than being publicly exposed. On the 10th day after the post at 2:42 p.m., I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't need to answer to know who it was. 4 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I walked to the window, parted the curtain slightly. My mother stood in the driveway, clutching her purse like she was visiting an old friend. My father stood behind her back, slightly hunched, gray hair, stark. Michael leaned against a porch pillar face, rigid like a misplaced stone. They didn't bring flowers, no pastries, just the hope I'd let them talk. I opened the door, didn't invite them in, didn't ask how they were. "You have 5 minutes," I said, voice steady and slow, like starting a trial. My mother's eyes welled up almost instantly. No surprise. She knew tears were effective, especially when no one's listening to explanations anymore. "We've let things go too far," she began. "I didn't know your post would make people think so badly of us." I cut her off, not loudly but firmly. Didn't know or didn't think I'd dare speak. Her eyes flickered for a moment, then shifted to a look of pity mixed with blame. "You've always been sensitive. We just thought, if you didn't react, you were fine." "Not reacting isn't being fine, Mom," I said. "I didn't speak because I thought if I was kind enough, you'd be kind back. I was wrong." My father spoke up, voice hoarse and heavy. "You should understand. Every family has disagreements. But airing it like this, it's not the way. It's not what a loyal person does." I turned to him. Loyal, I almost laughed. Loyal is maintaining the company's network for 11 years without payment, paying my cousin's tuition and never being acknowledged, sitting in the kitchen on Christmas Eve because our neighbors needed a seat more than your daughter. He didn't answer. His eyes hid behind his old glasses. For the first time in years, I saw my father shrink, not from age, but from losing the position to look down at me. Michael hadn't spoken, but I felt his gaze grow heavy like lead. I turned to him. Anything to say. Michael lifted his chin. "You're turning this into a tragedy." "When did the tragedy start, Michael? When I paid for your car repairs and got nothing back?" When I covered $800 for our sister's wedding, only to hear you're single childless, what do you need money for? Or when the whole family called me crazy for stopping the money flow. His face softened, not defensive anymore, like someone whose last mask had been torn off. He bit his lip, then said, I spent your money like it was a shared card. I didn't think you'd care. That's the problem, I replied. No one thought I had feelings, just money and endurance. My mother took a step toward me, eyes red, hand half raised like she wanted to grab mine. We're still family, Emma, no matter what we were once one. I looked at her. Then at all three standing at my door like actors in an old play trying to finish the final act without an audience. Family isn't blood, I said slowly. It's mutual choice. And you chose not to see me. Not my work, not my effort, not even me as a person. No one spoke. No one argued. No one apologized. I took a deep breath. Not of anger, of release. I used to think if I was quiet enough, you'd love me. If I was useful enough, you'd keep me. But no, I was only kept as long as I was useful. My mother trembled. So, what do you want? I looked at her then at each of them, and I answered not angry, not bitter, just clear like sunlight after a storm. I don't want anything anymore. I stepped back and closed the door. No slam, no lock. Just a gentle click like closing a chapter long overdue. I stood behind the door for a few seconds. Not to make sure they left, but to listen to the silence. A different kind of silence, not hollow, but full. The silence of someone who's said enough, and doesn't need to say more. That night I got a text from Lily, my niece Michael's daughter. Auntie, I know everyone's saying awful things about you, but I don't believe them. Got time for coffee? I looked at the screen. Again, no tears. But this time, not just relief, but warmth. One door closed, but not all were shut. I didn't expect a knock on the door that afternoon. August in San Diego is usually dry and sunny light, slanting through the curtains like needles. I was making tea, preparing to review a technical draft for next week's meeting, when 3 soft, even knocks sounded not rushed. I didn't hurry to open it, partly because I'm not used to guests, partly because whoever's knocking now must have a reason. When I opened the door, she stood there slight, holding a worn gray backpack. Hair-tied high eyes, waiting as if she'd just made a hard decision. Hi, Auntie Lily said. Her voice was small but clear. Lily, Michael's daughter, 17, a senior in high school. The kid who called me Auntie Emma IT because I fixed her laptop in 9th grade. The last time we talked was last year when I gave her Hidden Figures for Christmas. She thanked me, but I didn't know if she read it. Got a minute, I need to talk. Lily didn't dive in. She held out her hand holding an old iPhone 6 scratched screen, slightly cracked edges. I nodded, stepped aside to let her in. For the first time in years, I invited a family member into my kitchen. We sat across from each other at the dining table. I poured her a glass of cold lemonade and sat down waiting. Lily placed the iPhone on the table. She looked at it for a moment as if deciding where to start. Do you remember this? She asked. I nodded. I fixed it for you in 10th grade. The screen cracked because you dropped it in the bathroom. She gave a small laugh. Everyone said to toss it. Dad said, why care about an old phone? But you didn't say anything. You just asked, what does Lily need from this phone? I remembered that moment. I hadn't meant to say anything profound. I just saw something in her eyes that didn't want to let go. So I quietly replaced the screen, reinstalled the software, and threw in an old pair of my earphones. She continued, her voice softer but steady. If it wasn't for this phone, I wouldn't have recorded the video for my STEM scholarship last year. I wouldn't have recorded my nightly English practice. I wouldn't have had a way to log my physics experiments during online school. I stayed silent. Lily pulled an envelope from her backpack. Inside was a copy of an acceptance letter from UCLA, majoring in biotechnology, along with a handwritten note. We were particularly impressed by your video submission, where you presented a project on redesigning biological data through an iOS application. Congratulations. She looked at me, eyes glistening. You don't know this. You were the first person to see my worth, not because of grades or awards. Just because I wanted to fix something, and you helped without asking why. I didn't cry. But for the first time in years, my heart ached not from pain, but from knowing I could still reach someone. Lily said that after my post, the family fell into a tense silence. Michael skipped parent-teacher meetings. My mother locked her Facebook. My father only said to her, people think badly of us now. But no one, not one person, asked Lily how she felt. "I think they're more afraid of losing face than losing people," she said, eyes on her glass. I nodded. "You're right." After a pause, I took a small notepad, wrote a few lines, and slid it to her. "Here's a list of STEM resources, podcasts, online study groups. I used them when relearning after my hand injury. You might find them useful." Lily took it, her eyes lighting up quietly. She tucked it into her backpack's pocket and looked up. Can we stay in touch?" I smiled softly but genuinely. "I hope you will." From that day, Lily texted me weekly. At first about scholarships resources, then gradually photos of lab models, questions about basic coding, even complaints about classmates. She told me a boy in her class said girls in tech rarely succeed. She asked, "Did you ever hear that?" I replied, "Too many times. But the more they said it, the more I wanted to prove them wrong. And you will too." Slowly, Lily's messages became a quiet part of my routine. Not loud, not demanding. Just a young voice eager to be seen, understood, and to learn. She became a small light. Not bright, not noisy, but enough to warm a corner of my heart that had been frozen too long. One time, Lily sent a voice message, "Auntie Emma, I was thinking, maybe you don't need everyone in the family to understand you. Just one person is enough. And I want to be that person." I listened to it 3 times that night, not for the words, but for the voice. The way a kid dared to step up, not to defend, but to reconnect in the only way she knew, with gratitude. One weekend afternoon, I got a handwritten letter from Lily. 3 pages, slanted handwriting about UCLA's orientation, an inspiring female professor, and her future plans. The last line read, "I don't know what I can do for you, but if you ever saw me, then I'll always see you." I folded the letter and placed it in my drawer next to the file I'd prepared in case I had to sue my family, something I no longer want to touch. Because Lily, without meaning to, gave me the most important thing, after all these months of loss, the feeling that I'm not invisible. A month after our first meeting, I invited Lily back. This time I cooked garlic cream pasta, the dish I make when I need to feel safe. We sat on the porch talking about molecular biology, an MIT professor I'd studied under, remotely career paths she was considering. When Lily left, she hugged me, a quick teenage hug, not too long. Not awkward, but clear enough to show she meant it. A year ago, I removed the smart lock from the Lake Tahoe house's door. Today, I tied a ribbon around my wooden gate, attaching a handwritten sign. Family is those who choose to stay, not those who demand a price for love. No one forced me to do this. No anniversary, no holiday. I held this small gathering because I wanted to, a simple act that felt almost luxurious after years. No champagne. No fireworks, no tiered cakes or live bands. Just a late afternoon with warm lights, the scent of fresh mint in tea, a clean backyard with a few rugs, plastic chairs, and honest stories. It took me nearly 4 months to make the guest list. Not because it was long, but because I needed to be sure each person came out of care, not politeness, curiosity, or blood ties. In the end, the list was 9 people. Lily arrived first. She brought a craft paper bag with a drawing she made of me standing among faceless people, all looking at me not as a shadow, but as a real presence. That drawing, she said, was how I see you in my memory. I hung it on the living room wall near the bookshelf. Not formal, but where I can see it passing by. Then came Uncle Truong, my father's old friend, the first to call after my post last year, saying, "You did the right thing, but don't let anger erode your humanity." He brought a box of almond cookies made by his wife. Simple, old-fashioned, and oddly sincere. Next were 2 former colleagues who saw me work quietly, live neatly, and never asked why I avoided gatherings. Now they know, and they're here. A college friend, Amanda, flew in from Seattle, hugging me like time never passed. She saw me cry at a cousin's wedding when my mother called me the one who shames the family photo and was the only one to text me at midnight. "You deserve more than they show you." A few cousins, once silent when the family called me weird, apologized with their presence. No grand words, just a quiet being there, and sometimes that's enough. The gathering had no agenda. I didn't give a speech. No, I'm so grateful you came welcome. I didn't need their gratitude. I just needed them to feel invited, for who they are not, because I had to play the balancer anymore. We ate my garlic cream pasta, simple but flavorful. Lily made mint tea. Uncle Truong told stories about his first time using email. Amanda shared about her daughter starting first grade loving Lego over dolls. A cousin asked about designing smart lighting systems. No one mentioned my mother. No one brought up Lake Tahoe. And that told me these people came for me, not my history. After everyone left, I cleaned up slowly. No background music, no lingering noise. Just the smell of food, a few cookie crumbs, and a warm backyard. I stepped onto the balcony. Behind the house was a small lake, not big, not famous, but enough for me to reflect someone learning to live again. The moonlight lay quietly on the water. Crickets chirped softly, and the breeze passed through the eaves. I opened my phone. No texts from my mother, no calls from my father, no emails from Michael, no signals from the old family, and I realized I wasn't waiting anymore. Silence. But this time a peaceful silence. Not the silence of being forgotten, but the quiet of being seen by myself and by those who don't demand my pain as a price for recognition. I opened Lily's letter from a week ago, handwritten on pale yellow paper slanted script. I think family is the people who make you want to be better, not to be loved, but because you already are. You were the first to make me feel that. I folded it and placed it in the notebook I use for things I want to remember. Before I used it for bills, schedules, days I needed to send money to family. Now I use it for feelings, things that can't be quantified or reclaimed. On the first page I wrote family is something you cultivate, not a default. And sometimes you have to leave where you were born to build where you belong. I looked up at the San Diego sky stars, sparse but visible. I don't know what's ahead. I don't believe everything will always be smooth. But I know this: I spent part of my life seeking recognition. Now I live the rest for peace. And if anyone asks if I've found my family again, I'll say I didn't find family again. I built it with those who chose to stay. Family to me is no longer unbreakable blood ties. It's connections built on respect, listening, and choosing to stay without anyone having to sacrifice themselves to be loved. My story isn't about accusing anyone, but about reminding us that some silent wounds last a lifetime, just because people fear being called selfish for protecting themselves. I stayed silent to preserve what I thought was kinship. But that silence only made me fade. It wasn't until I dared to leave that I found my voice and the people who truly see me. If you've ever felt like a useful shadow in your own home, remember, you have the right to live authentically, to be loved without conditions. If this story resonates with you, follow the channel for more real journeys. And don't hesitate to share. Below your story might be a light for someone else.